morning again. Every time I touch that thing. Anyway, really grateful to be here today. And I know some of you have been waiting for me to preach about horses, and today is the day. How fun is that? So today I'm going to be continuing the series that Nicole started on healing in a hurting world. And she has offered so many ways and invitations regarding opportunities for healing in these days. And as I reflected about this sermon, and it's been simmering, and I was praying with it, and lots of different kinds of reflections, I could have gone in like 5 or 6 different ways. But the one that bubbled up today was about leadership. And so I'm really struck in this gospel story about how little things have changed since the first century in regards to people vying for status and power in leadership. First, James and John try to corner Jesus, asking very boldly, someone said this morning, "Do whatever we ask of you." How bold is that? And they ask Jesus to put them in these beautiful positions of power at his right and at his left, because they thought this is like the pinnacle. But then the other disciples hear about it, and then they get angry, and then they start arguing, and I imagine they started arguing about who deserves to be sitting there, who did what, how much power is there, who should lead, and on and on and on. And in the movie in my brain that I see, there's yelling, there's some backbiting, there's some rumor starting, misinformation, half-truths that are twisted, and probably some flattery towards Jesus. "Hey man, you look great today." And maybe all that sounds familiar. I follow historian Heather Cox Richardson on social media, and I love how she brings history into our contemporary goings-on. And this week, she was interviewed by Brene Brown on her podcast, Unlocking Us. I highly recommend it. But in the interview, she talked about our American history through today and the various people who utilized these kinds of power-grabbing tactics to retain or grab political power throughout our history. And for me, it really resonated with the kind of status-seeking and power the disciples were seeking. And to me, it kind of feels toxic, and I know it's a word that gets thrown out a lot, but for me, it fits. It fit then, and it fits now. But Jesus did not buy into that kind of power maneuvering that the disciples tried. He offered a very different model that was countercultural then and countercultural now. To be a leader, be a servant. Be a servant like me. Serve people, give to each other, give without expecting anything in return. We're all in this together. That's what Jesus' message was about. And I'm sure the disciples were a little taken aback by that. It was a very different model of leadership that Jesus was offering, not being at the top or at the right and the left, but it was pretty radical. Service above everything else. One commentator says about this text that I think this is a way to understand that it is to care, that we should care less about where we end up in the power hierarchy and to care more about how we're treating and viewing others as we go about our lives. The Jesus way shapes a different understanding of power and how to wield it. In so many different ways, human beings across cultures and times have fallen into a way of thinking about greatness that runs counter to the design that God has. Jesus literally gave his life, not just his death, to living in the way God intended. And his life and way of life should be our measure of greatness. Now, I don't know about any of you, but I have many stories about toxic leadership that I have experienced. So many, in fact, that I shared this morning in the 9 o'clock, that it's a small miracle that I'm here working alongside our 2 Nicoles in ministry, because after many experiences in various work environments, I thought I would never, ever work for or with anyone again. It was too painful to be betrayed and hurt by people in leadership. People who I worked with were more like the disciples, vying for position and to be the best than I care to admit and remember. And if I'm going to be truthful, as I was thinking about some of them, I had a post-traumatic stress response, and I had to do some work to kind of get myself back. Because so-called leaders in my world use their power to hurt, spread rumors and outright lies, exaggerate, berate, and undermine me. Why would anyone want to be in leadership after that? So it took some work. At one hospice job, I have many examples. I'm going to give you one, but there are many. At one hospice job, I coached a woman for a year on how to be a hospice manager. And then she became my supervisor. And I thought we had a good working relationship. I thought we had built some trust and understanding and a beautiful co-working style, because that's how I am. But come to find out, she did not value that. She did not like that collaborative management style or the relationship I had with our team members. And so, when she became my manager, she spent the next several months undermining everything I had built. She told higher leadership that I said and did things that never happened. And so the head of HR started sitting outside my office, listening to every phone call, watched every interaction I had with a team member, with the office staff, and watched how I ran my meetings. My supervisor made personal one-on-one phone calls to people that I supervised and told them things like, you know, Jackie really doesn't like you, she just pretends. She speaks really terrible about you in management meetings. She told people I was playing favorites, and so many other things I can't even begin to tell you it all. But what started to happen then is my team that I spent years building, who I loved, who trusted me, started to deteriorate. Then the backbiting happened among themselves and to me, and it became very clear I needed to save myself and get out. Because in order for me to continue to have any kind of sense of self-esteem, I needed to care for myself. But those kinds of dynamics happen everywhere. I know they're not unique. Our chaplain, Nicole, spoke of one this morning. And there are examples that we can think of in businesses, politics, probably even churches. They're just bountiful. We all have them. And yet Jesus preached and modeled a whole different way, a way of serving people, putting others first, lifting other people up, building community, recognizing each other's gifts, not having a huge ego. In seminary, I was introduced to womanist queer theologian Carter Hayward. Her book, Touching Our Strength, was important for me in the reconstruction of my theology and development of how I want to be in the world. She helped me put words to what I was longing for but hadn't yet found, and then worked for years to find and build, which now I have with our two Nicoles. She talked about power in right relation. Not power over with domination, but being in right relation with one another, serving and learning right alongside without someone needing to take over, to have their ego stroked, allowing everyone to use their gifts to the best of their ability and to know that each of our gifts are good and needed. And when we put all of our gifts together, magic happens. She said, heroes show us who we are not. Helpers show us who we are. Helpers call us forth in relation and strengthen our sense of ourselves. We do not need more domination and submission. We do not need to be shaped, named, and governed by others or patronized by those who believe they know what's best for us. But we do need each other. And indeed, we do need each other. We live in community, as messy as it is sometimes. And we are called to find ways to serve and to help others shine, to use our gifts wisely in service to the community and world so that everyone thrives. And I know that there are some of you out there thinking that this is naive and idealistic. And Jesus said, serve. Which brings me to the horses. Now, I could talk about this for hours, and it's probably a whole sermon series in and of itself. But some of my greatest healing and learning about healthy leadership has come from being with and observing horses. And if there's one thing horses do, it is use their gifts to serve the whole herd and allow others to serve them. So in case you're new to CUCC or to me, almost 20 years ago, I was bitten by the horse bug, and I haven't been the same since. I had our chaplain Nicole is doing a unit of clinical pastoral education now, but 20 years ago, I did one that included equine facilitated learning, and I was on the receiving end of some very powerful horse wisdom and teaching, and I vowed right then and there that I would do whatever I could so that I could offer that to people. In 2016, I completed an equine learning and coaching certification program, and so now I partner with my wonderful herd of horses to help others find healing and transformation through the wisdom of the horse. And here are just a few tidbits of learning and observation that the horses have helped me with in learning new ways of being in leadership. And I think they speak to the ways in which Jesus modeled leadership as well. So the first one, be present and own your own feelings, emotions, your stuff. Be present. Horses are beings who live in the now. They're not generally thinking about the past or holding grudges towards a horse something happened yesterday, somebody ate a piece of hay that they wanted. They're not worried about that. They do not hold grudges. And if there's a kerfuffle, they work it out in the moment, and then they go back to grazing, which is their version of harmony. They live in the present moment. They're not about thinking about the future. And they invite us to do the same. Because when you're in the moment, when you stay present with what is right now, this creates a safe environment for the herd and allows them to interact with one another with clarity and no games. They have to know what's going on with one another, because if one isn't feeling well, another one, it affects the whole herd. So in my own herd, I've noticed that the horses stay close to the one who's sick or hurt or colicky, because that helps protect them. And it also helps them bring a little comfort. And if the lead horse is tired, and we'll talk about herd order in a moment, if the lead horse is tired and they need to rest for a bit, then whoever is number 2 steps in so the other one can rest. It's seamless, and it adds to the cohesiveness and safety of the whole, but they just easily move between. And when you are with a horse, you must be fully present, because if you're all up in here in your head ruminating about whatever, it's unsafe for you, and it's unsafe for the horse, and it's most often when accidents happen because you're not fully present. But it's also true that if you're with a horse and you're not owning how you're feeling, and you're showing a mask, pretending that everything is fine, the horses see right through it. It's better to be upfront and honest and congruent about whatever is going on, because it creates safety. The horse knows what you're feeling. So I tell people, if you're scared, anxious, worried, angry, whatever, tell your horse. Because when you do, you can literally watch the horse lower their head, relax, because the person's being honest. And when you don't, then the horse will move away, or they might put their ears back, they might stomp their feet, or something worse. And wouldn't it be great if everyone we interacted with was honest about how they're feeling so we're not left guessing? Have you ever been around someone whose body language and demeanor indicate that something is up, but when you ask, they say, "I'm fine." No, you're not. And sometimes they say it with a lot of energy, "I'm fine," and they're scowling. And you know it's not true, and it makes you uncomfortable, and you don't feel safe. It's what happened with my supervisor. I didn't feel safe. Because in this way, leaning into being truthful, honest, and congruent serves you and others around you. Maybe others can offer you some support or comfort when it's needed, rather than continuing to isolate or run away. Lean into asking for what you need so that others can serve you. But being present is one way horses teach us about leadership. Another thing horses have taught me is that you have to modify your style based on what people need. When you spend time with horses, you notice that sometimes horses lead from the front of the herd, sometimes they lead from the back, and sometimes they lead side by side. Sometimes their energy is small, and sometimes it's really big. And it's never the same all the time. They modify based on what is needed by the herd in the moment. And they need the same from those humans who interact with them. In the wild, and even in domestic herds, if a threat is approaching, the lead horse must signal to the rest of the herd so they can all get to safety. For example, if a hungry mountain lion is approaching a herd, the lead horses must notice and signal to the rest of the herd so that they can run and escape and not be dinner. And if they send a signal that's too small, then no one knows and someone's going to get eaten. But I will tell you, there is nothing subtle about the signal a horse sends. They're up front, they have big energy, and they are clear. And in a split second, the herd starts running. But there are some horses whose job it is to lead from behind. It's their job to bring up the rear, to subtly guide the herd, making sure no one's left behind as they move from place to place. A wild band of horses has to move all the time to find food and water, and the lead mare or stallion is up front, but the horse in the back is there to make sure the young ones or old ones stay with the rest of the herd. They guide and they nudge when needed. And sometimes horses are shoulder to shoulder. This kind of leadership is seen most often with a mare and her foal. The mom keeps the baby right next to her for protection, but it's also for teaching them how to walk, run, where to go, how to play, what to do, what not to do, but they're right next to each other. And when you work with horses, you learn how to modulate your energy. Sometimes you have to be quiet and subtle. Sometimes you have to get a little bit bigger. And sometimes you have to get really, really big. And all of this is important to do something as simple as leading a horse around a paddock or even riding. But it also translates to working with people and being a healthy leader. Sometimes you lead from up front, sometimes you lead and guide from behind, and sometimes you're side to side. So right now, I'm normally the wing woman. I'm side to side with Nicole, holding her up, supporting her. Today I'm up front. Sometimes I'm in the behind. All those emails you get from Nicole, either of the Nicoles or I, that say, "What support do you need for that?" That's us leading from behind. So there's all different ways you can lead. And Jesus did the same thing. He was up front teaching a lot. Sometimes he walked side by side with people along the road, and sometimes he was behind shepherding and guiding people. All of that creates a safe environment for everyone and allows others to step up and lead and guide and share their gifts to serve as well. Horses also give clear, consistent communication. Nothing is worse than when someone sends mixed messages or doesn't communicate at all. Jesus did not do that. He was pretty consistent in messaging that love and serving is the way forward with God. It's the Jesus way. And how Jesus showed up with disciples was the same as with religious and political leaders, as with people he met along the road. Horses are clear in their communication. I can tell immediately when our horse Anu is having a day, when he's wanting to receive love and attention through touch, and when he wants to be left alone. And sometimes he's also very clear he wants to be the giver of love and attention. And it's my job to listen and notice and allow. When he wants me to groom, like yesterday, he lets me approach, and as I talk to him, his ears perk up. He lowers his head, and sometimes he'll just gently bring his head into my chest here to nuzzle. And then he relaxes his foot. We call it cocking the leg. And when he does not want to receive, his ears go straight back, his head is high, and he is very clearly signaling, do not touch me today. And then when he wants to give, which is a lot, he's a giver, he will let me stand next to him, but his ears are constantly moving. Don't touch me, don't touch me. But then he'll lower his head. And for me, he often will come to my arms, because you all know I'm having a lot of arm pain for a long time. He'll come and he'll rub his head up and down my arms for healing. I have another woman who comes, and she is dealing with a lot of grief. He will come right to her chest and put his nose there. And then I'm like, do not touch him, because he'll walk away. And it's true. You try to touch him in those moments, he'll like, mm-mm. So it's about paying attention. And wouldn't it be wonderful if humans clearly communicated their needs and desires, requests and intentions so clearly? Wouldn't it be great if it was the same every time rather than making us guess? Or finding out the hard way that what you said or did was wrong, but you didn't have any idea? Humans are so exhausting when it comes to communicating what we want and need. But what if we were consistent in our communication? What if we owned that we're having a hard time or are overwhelmed rather than projecting or blaming someone else or sending a hasty email or making a biting comment? What if our actions reflected our communication consistently? What would change and what would be possible? Horses show us that. And the last one I'll share with you is that everyone in a herd has a role, and relationships matter. Horses are prey animals. They need one another to survive and, most importantly, to thrive. Horses are not meant to live alone. Humans aren't either. In a herd of horses, there is a herd order, but unlike humans who project worth and value on people based on where you are in the hierarchy, horses value each other and their roles equally. In the wild, it might look like this. The lead mare sets the direction and pace of the herd. The lead stallion keeps the herd together and protects it from predators. Each member of the herd has a role in protecting the health of the herd. All of the horses in the herd contribute equally to the socialization of new or young members, teaching them what behaviors are acceptable and correcting them when they behave in ways that could compromise the health of the herd. The overwhelming goal of the leadership is to create unity, harmony, and collaboration while keeping the herd safe. They need to foster an environment free of danger and give the herd members a sense of belonging, the power to make decisions, and offering trust and empathy. And in this sense, leadership is shared. Each herd member contributes their gifts and power to the whole. What each offers is valued and needed for the whole to survive and thrive. Imagine a world where we each are valued for what we contribute equally. Imagine a world where our gifts were used to serve one another and the community so that everyone thrives and no one's left behind. Imagine a world where we value one another and what each offers equally. That's not socialism. That's what Jesus was talking about. Serve one another. Or as Kate Bowler said in her blessing, pour out your great, great gifts for the sake of the other to work towards this beautiful, horrible, terrible interdependence. Now, how about you? What resonates with you today? Have you experienced toxic leadership? What leadership qualities do you value? And how do you serve in the world? So we'll take a minute, find a pal, have some conversation, and we'll come back to end in a moment. All right. And we're back. Good conversations, I can tell. They can continue during our fellowship time. People of God, use your gifts to serve others. And to quote Kate Bowler, may you be reminded that maybe you were called for just such a time as this, to pour out your great, great gifts for the sake of the other, to work toward this beautiful, terrible interdependence, even if community is much easier in theory than in practice. Thank you, and we'll take a moment of silence to let this sink in however it will, and Philip will bring us back with the singing bowl.
Greetings to you wherever you are watching this. For those of you whom I have yet to meet in person, I'm Reverend Nicola Marsh, pastor here at Community UCC. And we see that people like you are watching our live stream each week. And because of this, we are excited to be embarking upon an experiment. And we need you. If you are engaging with us regularly, finding meaning in what we are about, we would like to extend a special invitation for you to be among the first CUCC digital disciples. For signing up for just $10 a month, you will receive a t-shirt with the new CUCC logo. And we are also exploring the idea of offering other content to those of you who are part of this new and growing area of digital ministry. Sign up to support us in this new way at cuccboulder.org/support by clicking on the yellow donate tab and noting you are a digital disciple in the instructions. Or as always, we welcome an old-fashioned check mailed to us at CUCC, P.O. Box 3646, Boulder, Colorado 80307. Thank you for being and building beloved community with us, and thank you for your gift, whatever it might be.